this might be better than the NZXT H9 Flow. Today, we're gonna review the Phanteks NV5 case, which is the little brother to the Phanteks NV7 case. I'm gonna walk you through some of the features of the case, my overall thoughts, then we're gonna build a computer and let you know what it's like to build in. The first and actually an important piece of the case is the packaging that it comes in. For protection, they use this really nice foam. It's super durable. You're not gonna have to worry about anything getting damaged, even in like a corner strike scenario. And the best part of all, you're gonna be able to ship this multiple times, which is super important for someone like me, who's a system integrator. And I reuse the packaging that the case comes in as part of the overall protection when I ship computers out. So, really great job on this Phanteks. It might not be super eco-friendly, but it is very durable and very safe. The other part that I really like is instead of a plastic bag that goes over the top of the case to protect it from scratches, they use this nice fabric one. Again, super reusable, super durable, great choice. Let's get into the case itself. First, it's got a really awesome design with 2 glass panels, giving you lots of good viewing room into the interior. You've got tons of fan support. There's a 120mm fan support on the bottom. You can fit several fans along the side, 1 along the back, and 3 along the top. This thing is gonna have great airflow characteristics. Now let's switch around to the back. You can see we've got the power supply here. It's kind of weird that the power supply is at an angle, but it might bother some people with OCD, but other than that, there's really no problem with that there. Let's pull the back panel off and let's check out some of the cable management and other features of the case. 2 thumb screws to get the back panel off. Sometimes they come a little tight from the factory, but once you undo it the first time, you should be able to just use your hands from then on out rather than a screwdriver. Then to pull it off, just pull it back, lift it out. Okay, let's take a look at this. So they've got this really nice feature here. You can hide some hard drives or 2.5-inch SSDs, maybe even an RGB hub right here, and that's just gonna sit nice and closed there. You can see there's some cable management windows here for your CPU power, maybe some fan power. We've also got another nice channel with reusable cable ties here for all of your other cable management. There's a lot of space down here so you can have a really big power supply or just room to have your power supply cables tucked down in there, maybe your RGB hub down there instead. And then a nice big open window. This can be super useful when you're mounting your CPU cooler. I know some coolers, like the new Deep Cool AIOs, you actually need to be able to access the back of the motherboard when you're mounting the CPU cooler block. So that's great to have. Also really big channels kind of all throughout in order to pass through cables, as well as some nice rubber grommets over on this side for your motherboard and other cables. The case comes with some built-in RGB that's SATA powered and can be controlled directly by the motherboard. For front I/O, you have power. You can control your RGB up here with different colors and modes. There's USB-C, 2 USB 3 ports, and your audio jack. Overall, the construction is kind of what you would expect from Phanteks. It looks great, it's very utilitarian, and you can expect it to last a long time. One other thing that I didn't immediately notice, but is quite visible now, is it actually comes with a built-in GPU support that is completely flexible. You can slide this piece out if you have a really big GPU. You can move it up and down to accommodate where you mount your GPU and how big it is. With how big some of the higher end GPUs are these days, that's gonna be a really nice feature just to avoid any sort of sag on those 4080s and 4090s. And we're actually gonna put a 4080 in this later, so we'll have a good idea of how well this thing works. The last thing I'm noticing in here, and this has been a new trend for a lot of cases that have come out this year, is the front panel power switch and everything is on a single connector rather than the old school 2-pin connectors. It's super convenient, it's a lot easier to use, and it ensures that you don't put any of those connectors in the wrong place or in the wrong direction, which can matter for some of them. The last thing that we see on here is it's set up for full ATX motherboard support, but there are spots for you to move those standoffs to micro ATX or even ITX. Why you would use an ITX motherboard in this case is beyond me, but you can. Well, I think that's about as much as we're gonna glean just by looking at the case. So let's build a computer in there and see what we have to say about it after that. So far from what I saw, just kind of spinning it around, thinking about it a little bit, noodling on it, I think it's gonna be better than the NV7 was. Another thing that I'm noticing, I'm using the NV5 right now. One, I really didn't like the back panel and cover thing that they had on the NV7. That thankfully is gone for the NV5. And it's also fairly light. Like it feels like good quality like material and manufacturing, but it's not like some of the Lee & Lee and other cases that are, 30 plus pounds before you ever put anything inside of them, which makes it really expensive for shipping, but also just makes it kind of a pain to move around. So I'm happy to say this is not that heavy. Motherboard is installed. I think one thing that I'm seeing here, they could have maybe left a little bit more room down at the bottom. Like we've got lots of good space up top, which you love to see when you're gonna put in an AIO up top, but the bottom of the motherboard is maybe 1/4 of an inch from the bottom of this, or from the top of this shroud. And I just don't like that. I don't have a rational reason for it. I just don't like it. I don't see any spots where you could put a wider fan, even on the top. Interesting. That might be the first negative of this case. There does not appear to be any 140 millimeter fan support. One thing I am noticing here with the back is these channels don't appear to be perfectly aligned for these fans. So whether that's on the fans or the channels, either way, it seems like it's probably the fault of the case because I've never had this before. These don't appear to be perfectly the right width and thickness for mounting a fan into it. Another small complaint about the case. Another thing I'm noticing that I like about the way they set up this cable management is you don't have to feed these cable ties through like a thin slot. It just is an open like bottom, like it's just open down there, and it has like a hook to keep it from just kind of easily sliding out. Great feature. See, here's another point where like the way that they design their cable management channels is just so smart. Because this isn't like a little spot that I have to try and shoot through, I don't have to fight with trying to keep this cable tie from going back behind this plate here. I just hook it over the top and tighten it down. It's awesome. Great job, Phanteks. Well, despite a lot of yanking and pulling, that grommet stayed in place. That's more than can be said for a lot of the cheaper cases. These grommets tend to just like come loose. So however they have these kind of mounted onto the case, it's good. This is a very large GPU, and it's nice. I've got a pretty solid, I would say, 1.5 inches, maybe 2 inches of space between where this port is and where the front panel is going to be. That's going to be super important for these new NVIDIA connectors to ensure that this cable is not up against the glass, or if it is, at least it's not causing a bunch of stress on the connector, which we know has been known to cause fires. So key point there if you have a big GPU. Cool, so super easy adjustment on this GPU support bracket. We just made it all loose before installing our GPU so it wasn't in the way, and hand tighten this one that kind of clamps on the outside, and then use our screwdriver for the two on the base that hold the whole support piece up. Looks nice and sleek, maybe not the most aesthetically pleasing bit here that clamps on, but in terms of performance, like longevity of your GPU, I think looking at that is probably worth it. As you can see, we completed our build in the new Phanteks NV5 case, and here's my final thoughts and overall rating for the case. First, I was a little concerned that these cable management pathways weren't going to be deep enough for the cables that we had. Thankfully, the tie downs and the overall design of how they set up this cable management is actually really good, and unless you've got a ton of really thick cables, you should be just fine with the channels that are available. Then moving back to the front, I love the support for all these different fans. Gonna get lots of good airflow in here for any size of components, no matter how much heat they're creating. The overall size of it is also really good. I was able to fit this RTX 4080 in there with no problems. It looks great. It was actually pretty easy to build in, with the exception of the power supply cables being maybe a little bit too short for this case, but that's more of a power supply issue than the case. Overall quality, from everything I can tell, it feels really good quality. Everything fit pretty well. Nothing feels loose or flimsy on it. All in all, I'd give it a 9 out of 10, especially for the price of just $100 US before taxes on Newegg. If you're in the market and you have space for a case like this, the Phanteks NV5 is the case for you. And honestly, I know in my October news video, I said that the NZXT H9 Flow case was my favorite case of 2023. I think we gotta take the NZXT H9 down to second place, because this is my new favorite. And with that, that's the end of our review for the Phanteks NV5. If you like this kind of content, let me know in the comments. If you wanna see more of these types of videos, or if you have something specific that you'd like me to review, let me know in the comments, and we'll see you on the next one.